Hey there. It's Kesha. Welcome and welcome back. Um, let's just go ahead and get right into it. We'll close our eyes and take a deep breath. And out. Deep breath in. And out. Another deep breath in. And feel yourself becoming more and more present in this moment, in this space. Ready to take the next step on our journey. Deep breath in. And out. When you're ready, gently open your eyes. Okay. So judging by that, you can tell I've been racing all day to get to this point and just couldn't wait to just dive right in. So we're going to pick up chapter 16. I think we're going to read 16, 17, 18, 19. Today there's quite a bit. It all kind of makes sense to keep it together. So yeah, let's just start. Chapter 16. The home of Joseph was on Marmion Way in Nazareth. Here Mary taught her son the lessons of Elihu and Salome. And Jesus greatly loved the Vedic hymns and the Avesta, but more than all, he loved to read the Psalms of David and the pungent words of Solomon. The Jewish books of prophecy were his delight, and he reached his 7th year. He needed not the books to read, for he had fixed in memory every word. Joachim and his wife, grandparents of the child Jesus, made a feast in honor of the child, and all their near kin were guests. And Jesus stood before the guests, and he said, I had a dream, and in my dream I stood before a sea upon a sandy beach. The waves upon the sea were high, and the storm was raging on the deep. Someone above gave me a wand. I took the wand and touched the sand, and every grain of sand became a living thing. The beach was all a mass of beauty and of song. I touched the waters at my feet, and they were changed to trees and flowers and singing birds, and everything was praising God. And someone spoke. I did not see the one who spoke. I heard the voice, which said, There is no death. Grandmother Anna loved the child. She laid her hand on Jesus' head and said, I saw you stand beside the sea. I saw you touch the sand and waves. I saw them turn to living things, and then I knew the meaning of the dream. The sea of life rolls high. The storms are great. The multitude of men are idle, listless, waiting, like dead sand upon the beach. Your wand is truth. With this you touch the multitudes, and every man becomes a messenger of holy light and life. You touch the waves upon the sea of life, their turmoil cease, and very high winds become a song of praise. There is no death, because the wand of truth can change the driest bones to living things and bring the loveliest flowers from the stagnant ponds, and turn the most discordant notes to harmony and praise. Joachim said, My son, today you pass the 7th milestone of your way of life. For you are 7 years of age, and we will give to you, as a remembrance of this day, whatever you desire. Choose that which will afford you most delight. And Jesus said, I do not want a gift, for I am satisfied. If I could make a multitude of children glad upon this day, I would greatly be pleased. Now, there are many hungry boys and girls in Nazareth who would be pleased to eat with us this feast and share with us the pleasures of this day. The richest gift that you can give to me in your permission to go out and find these needy ones and bring them here that they may feast with us. Joachim said, 'Tis well. Go out and find the needy boys and girls and bring them here, and we will prepare enough for all. And Jesus did not wait. He ran. He entered every dingy hut and cabin of the town. He did not waste his words. He told his mission everywhere. And in a little time, 103 score of happy, ragged boys and girls were following him up Marmion Way. The guests made way. The banquet hall was filled with Jesus' guests, and Jesus and his mother helped to serve. And there was food enough for all, and all were glad. And so the birthday gift of Jesus was a crown of righteousness. Now, Rabbi Barakiah of the synagogue of Nazareth was aide to Mary in the teaching of her son. One morning after service in the synagogue, the rabbi said to Jesus as he sat in silent thought, "Which is the greatest of the 10 commands?" And Jesus said, I do not see a greatest of the 10 commands. I see a golden cord which runs through all the 10 commands, that binds them fast and makes them one. This cord is love, and it brings to every word of all the 10 commandments. 10 commands. If one is full of love, he can do nothing else but worship God, for God is love. If one is full of love, he cannot kill, he cannot falsely testify, he cannot covet, can do naught but honor God and man. If one is full of love, he does not need commands of any kind. And Rabbi Barakiah said, "Your words are seasoned with the salt of wisdom that is from above. Who is the teacher who has opened up this truth to you?" And Jesus said, "I do not know that any teacher opened up this truth for me. It seems to me that truth was never shut, that it was always opened up, for truth is one and it is everywhere. And if we open up the windows of our minds, the truth will enter in and make herself at home, for truth can find her way through any crevice, any window, any open door." The rabbi said, "What hand is strong enough to open up the windows and the doors of the mind so truth can enter in?" And Jesus said, "It seems to me that love, the golden cord that binds the 10 commands in one, is strong enough to open any human door so that the truth can enter in and cause the heart to understand." Now, in the evening, Jesus and his mother sat alone, and Jesus said, "The rabbi seems to think that God is partial in his treatment of the sons of men, that Jews are favored and are blessed above all other men. I do not see how God can have his favorites and be just. Are not Samaritans and Greeks and Romans just as much the children of the Holy One as are the Jews? I think the Jews have built a wall around themselves, and they see nothing on the other side of it. They do not know that flowers are blooming over there, that sowing times and reaping times belong to anybody but the Jews. It surely would be well if we could break these barriers down so that the Jews might see that God has other children that are just as greatly blessed. I want to go from Jewry land to meet my kin in other countries of my fatherland." The great feast of the Jews was on, and Joseph, Mary, and their son, and many of their kin went to Jerusalem. The child was 10 years old. And Jesus watched the butchers kill the lambs and the birds and burn them on the altar in the name of God. His tender heart was shocked at the display of cruelty. He asked the serving priests, "What is the purpose of this slaughter of the beasts and the birds? Why do you burn their flesh before the Lord?" The priests replied, "This is our sacrifice for sin. God has commanded us to do these things and said that in these sacrifices all our sins are blotted out." And Jesus said, "Will you be kind enough to tell when God proclaimed that sins are blotted out by the sacrifice of any kind? Did not David say that God requires not a sacrifice for sin, that it is sin itself to bring before his face burnt offerings as offerings for sin? Did not Isaiah say the same?" The priest replied, "My child, you are beside yourself. Do you know more about the laws of God than all the priests of Israel? This is no place for boys to show their wit." But Jesus heeded not his taunts. He went to Hillel, chief of the Sanhedrin, and he said to him, "Rabboni, I would like to talk with you. I am disturbed about this service of the Paschal feast. I thought the temple was the house of God, where love and kindness dwell. Do you not hear the bleating of those lambs, the pleading of those doves that men are killing over there? Do you not smell that awful stench that comes from burning flesh? Can man be kind and just and still be filled with cruelty? A God that makes delight in sacrifice, in blood and burning flesh, is not my Father God. I want to find a God of love, and you, my master, you are wise, and surely you can tell me where to find the God of love." But Hillel could not give an answer to the child. His heart stirred with sympathy. He called the child to him. He laid his hand upon his head and wept. He said, "There is a God of love, and you shall come with me, and hand in hand we shall go forth and find the God of love." And Jesus said, "Why need we go? I thought that God is everywhere. Can we not purify our hearts and drive out cruelty and every wicked thought, and make within a temple where the God of love can dwell?" The master of the great Sanhedrin felt as though he was himself a child, and that before him stood Rabboni, master of the higher law. He said within himself, "This child is surely a prophet sent from God." Then Hillel sought the parents of the child and asked that Jesus might abide with him and learn the precepts of the law and all the lessons of the temple priests. His parents gave consent, and Jesus did abide within the holy temple of Jerusalem, and Hillel taught him every day. And every day the master learned from Jesus many lessons of the higher life. The child remained with Hillel in the temple for a year, and then returned unto his home in Nazareth, and there he wrought with Joseph as a carpenter. Again, the great feast in Jerusalem was on, and Joseph, Mary, and their son were there. The child was 12 years old, and there were Jews and proselytes from many countries in Jerusalem. And Jesus sat among the priests and doctors in the temple hall. And Jesus opened up a book of prophecy and read, "Woe, woe to Ariel, the town where David dwelt. I will dismantle Ariel, and she shall groan and weep, and I will camp against her round with hostile posts. And I will bring her low, and she shall speak out of the earth. With muffled voice like a familiar spirit shall she speak. Yea, she shall only whisper forth her speech. And foes unnumbered like the grains of dust shall come upon her suddenly. The Lord of hosts will visit her with thunder and with tempest, and with storm and with earthquake, and with devouring flames. Lo, all these people have deserted me. They draw to me with speech, and with their lips they honor me. Their hearts are far removed from me. Their fear for me is that inspired by man. And I will breathe an adverse breath upon my people, Israel. The wisdom of the wise men shall be lost. The understanding of their prudent men shall not be found. My people seek to hide their counsel from the Lord, so that their works may not be seen. They fain would cover up their works with darkness of night and say, "Who sees us now? Who knows us now?" Poor foolish men. Shall that which has been made say of its maker, "He is not, I made myself"? Or shall the pot speak out and say to him who made the pot, "You have no skill, you do not know"? But this will not forever be. The time will come when Lebanon will be a fruitful field, and fruitful fields will be transformed to groves. And on that day the deaf will hear the words of God. The blind will read the book of God's remembrance. And suffering ones will be relieved, and they will have abundant joy. And every one that needs will be supplied. And it will come to pass that all the foolish will be wise. The people will return and sanctify the Holy One, and in their heart of hearts, lo, they will reverence him. When Jesus had thus read, he put aside the book and said, "You masters of the law, will you make plain for us the prophet's words?" Now Hillel sat among the masters of the law, and he stood forth and said, "Perhaps our young Rabboni who has read the word will be interpreter." And Jesus said, "The Ariel of the prophet is our own Jerusalem." The selfishness and cruelty of this people has become a stench unto the Elohim. The prophet saw these days from far, and of these times he wrote. Our doctors, lawyers, priests, and scribes oppress the poor, while they themselves in luxury live. The sacrifices and the offerings of Israel are but abomination unto God. The only sacrifice that God requires is self. Because of this injustice and this cruelty of man to man, the Holy One has spoken of this commonwealth. Because of this injustice and this cruelty of man to man, the Holy One has spoken of this commonwealth. Lo, I will overturn, yes, I will overturn, it shall be overturned, and it shall be no more until he comes whose right it is, and I will give it unto him. In all the world there is one law of right, and he who breaks the will And he who breaks the law will suffer grief, for God is just. And Israel has gone far astray, has not regarded justice, nor the rights of man, and God's demands that Israel shall reform, and turn again to the ways of holiness. And if our people will not hear the voice of God, lo, nations from afar will come and sack Jerusalem, and tear our temple down, and take our people captive into foreign lands. But this will not forever be, and though they be scattered far and wide, and wander here and there among the nations of the earth like sheep that have no shepherd guide, the time will come when God will bring again the captive hosts, for Israel shall return and dwell in peace. And after many years our temple shall be built again, and one whom God will honor, one in whom the pure in heart delights will come and glorify the house of God and reign in righteousness. When Jesus had thus said, he stepped aside, and all the people were amazed and said, "This surely is the Christ." The great feast of the Pasch was ended, and the Nazarenes were journeying toward their homes. And they were in Samaria, and Mary said, "Where is my son? No one has seen the boy." And Joseph sought among their kindred who were on their way to Galilee, but they had seen him not. Then Joseph, Mary, and a son of Zebedee returned and sought through all Jerusalem, but they could find him not. And then they went up to the temple courts and asked the guards, "Have you seen Jesus, a fair-haired boy with blue eyes, 12 years of age, about these courts?" The guards replied, "Yes, he is in the temple now disputing with the doctors of the law." And they went in and found him as the guards had said. And Mary said, "Why, Jesus, why do you treat your parents thus? Lo, we have sought 2 days for you. We feared that some great harm had overtaken you." And Jesus said, "Do you not know that I must be about my Father's work?" But he went round and pressed the hand of every doctor of the law and said, "I trust that we may meet again." And then he went forth with his parents on their way to Nazareth. And when they reached their home, he wrought with Joseph as a carpenter. One day he was bringing forth the tools for work. He said, "The tools remind me of the ones we handle in the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and where we build up character. We use the square to measure all our lines, to straighten out our crooked places of the way, and make the corners of our conduct square. We use the compass to draw circles around our passions and desires, to keep them in the bounds of righteousness. We use the axe to cut away the knotty, useless, ungainly parts, and make the character symmetrical. We use the hammer to drive home truth, to pound it in until it is a part of every part. We use the plane to smooth the rough, uneven surfaces of joint and block and board that go to build the temple for the truth. The chisel, line, and plummet, and the plummet, and the saw all have their uses in the workshop of the mind. And then this ladder with its trinity of steps, faith, hope, and love. On it we climb up to the dome of purity and life. And on the 12-step ladder we ascend until we reach the pinnacle of that which life is spent to build, the temple of perfected man." Okay, so yeah. 4 chapters, quite a bit. There's a lot that was covered. So going back to the beginning, we covered quite a bit of time because we start with Jesus being 7, and I think we end with him being 12. So in those 4 chapters, we've covered about 5 years of his life. You can tell that even though at the age of 7, he is, living from the heart and curious, right? Asking so many questions, aware of his dreams and open to listening to the interpretations of others. It's not that he doesn't have, he is, what's the word? He's humble, he's as for as much truth and wisdom as he's able to reveal, he is able to receive that truth from others. So a couple of lines that stand out for me. Your wand is truth. There's a book by Florence Scovel Shinn, The Truth, Your Word is Your Wand. And And if your word be of truth, then yeah, your wand is truth. And again, this message that there is no death, I think we had in the previous chapter or the previous reading, we had John, whose grief was unimaginable, and being taught that we solve our problems as well as there as well as here. And so we can release our grief to know that they are doing well there as well as here. But now we learn that death is the illusion, that there is no death. And there is no death because the wand of truth can change. It can change the driest bones back to life, and discordant notes to harmony and praise. So that's interesting. The through line of the 10 Commandments, which one is the greatest? The through line is love. So love is the greatest commandment. They call them commands here, but commandment, we recognize the word. Yeah, if one is full of love, you don't need the commandments of any kind. And remember, too, that the commandments grew out of people doing that which they wanted that served themselves. And, we end up with the book of Deuteronomy because there were all these things being done and people had to write laws to try to stop it. But if the first word had been the law of love, then we wouldn't have had a need for all of these other things if people had been learning that lesson and actively practicing it. What else was of interest? Oh, I love it. So he has his birthday party and he's offered, anything he could have. And he offers his desire is to hold a feast and banquet for all the needy kids in the neighborhood. So 160 kids got to have a feast because he was so gracious. I thought that was lovely. I did that once. I don't know, one birthday. I don't know. I think it was my freshman year of college, and instead of looking for gifts from my friends that I invited to my birthday party, I gave them gifts instead, and it was such a turn. But yeah, it's a nice thing to use your birthday or use a celebration in your honor as an opportunity to honor those or honor others or to share with others. Yeah, and that expansive heart extends to not just in his small world and his family and seeing the children of his neighborhood, but he also is thinking much more broadly, right? Because right after the feast with the sharing his birthday with his children, he's having the conversation with the rabbi that why do the Jews believe that God loves only them? And he's like, but no, there are other people out there, and if God is the God of love, then he loves them all. And so he makes the comment, I want to go beyond the land of the Jews, and I want to meet all of my brothers and sisters in my Father's land. Yeah. So then at 10, the priests are calling him a little smartass because he's asking a question. I know that feeling. I think we all do. Especially when we're asking questions about what we perceive to be a right or a wrong. And I think, we've all had that moment with our parents where we're trying to understand something, that we're trying to make sense of something that we're seeing and how it doesn't match up with what we've been told. And then we get this, do as I say, not as I do. That's kind of the exchange we had here with the rabbi. Don't be so smart you're too smart for your own good kind of thing. But yeah, I say keep asking the questions. What else? Yeah, Hillel is sweet, right? The chief of the Sanhedrin. And, when Jesus says to him, I want to find this God of love, Hillel in his mind says, okay, take my hand and we will go fight him together. And Jesus is like, no, we don't have to go anywhere because God is right here, everywhere present. And Halil at that moment realizes that he is in the presence of one who is truly sent from God. So Jesus then is 12. And again, he's it's another feast. And I love how, again, he's still, he's still asking his questions. How can you question the greatness of the one who created you? I like the part about, if would the pot speak and say to the one that made the pot that you had no skill? I mean, and then we come to the only sacrifice that God requires is self, because he's seen all the animals and the burnings, and that doesn't make any sense. Why would the God of love require so much death and cruelty? And the only sacrifice that God asks is of the self. That the only thing that is being asked of us is to bring ourselves to God and let him work with us, right? To put aside our small selves in order to be revealed greater. And I think certainly the prophecy you can look at, from a historical perspective, but that's a lot of the book of the prophets and the Bible, so we've kind of seen that or heard those stories before, I think. Then, of course, when he's 12, they're coming back from a feast, and he separates himself from his parents to go to go learn in the temple and speak with the doctors of the law there. It's a very loving moment, I think, that they take time to mention that he is, shaking hands with each of them and says, "We shall meet again," because if you know the story, then at a later time he will. The only thing that I have a little bit with was their description of him, the fair-haired boy with the deep blue eyes. Yeah, no, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's okay too. And then the workshop of the mind, right? This ability to, when you're so steeped in spirit that you see everything around you through that lens and you interpret everything that way, or see how everything that happens is an opportunity for greater understanding of spirit and its revelation. So yeah, he goes through the different tools and how they can be used to shape and define our character. And I think, after having been in certainly seminary, but like being in metaphysics for as long as I have, which at this point, I don't know, 20 some years maybe. Like that, looking for a reason or seeing the workings of spirit through everything that happens. Excuse me. Again. It's certainly given me a deeper understanding of the events that happen, and a way to resolve them and have a better understanding and how to navigate and move through my world with greater ease and wisdom. And even, just, when I counsel, right? When other people are explaining their situations, it's when you get practiced in looking at things through the eyes of spirit and recognizing that everything that happens is an opportunity to learn, and is an expression of something that's working itself out outwardly, that is happening inwardly. It gives you a greater sense of insight and wisdom. So I find that particularly helpful in navigating this somewhat challenging existence. But yeah, that was a fairly large reading for the moment, and I think we'll just leave it there and pick up with 21 next week. Any questions, comments, leave them down below, and I'll see you all next week, and I love you in the meantime. Bye.